So I don't know if everybody is in yet. I don't see any of the attendees. I just see a number.
If you click on participants, oh yeah, if you click on attendees at the top in the gray bar, you'll see the list.
Mine doesn't show a list though. It just says.
If you click on participants, there's two tabs. One says panelists, one says attendees to the right of it.
Yeah, so I can click on panelists. I see all 7 panelist names. And when I click on attendees, I see the number 29, but there's no names.
Doesn't give you a list?
It doesn't. Oh, that's weird.
But that's okay. If everybody's in, we can get started.
I'm sure more will be coming as
okay.
Yeah.
Well, we'll go ahead and kick things off and get started. Good morning, everybody. Thank you so much for being here this morning with us. We'll get started with some opening remarks while more people kind of trickle in. My name is Kelsey George, and I'm one of the directors of professional development for the Central section of the California chapter of the American Planning Association. So we actually have 2 APAs here today, American Planning Association and the Allensworth Progressive Association. So there might be some confusion. I'll over-iterate to make sure that we can differentiate between the 2. My colleague Simran Judy is not able to make it this morning, but she serves on the board with me. She's the director of equity and diversity, and she was really instrumental in getting this program off the ground and running. So I do just want to acknowledge her and her efforts, as well as her colleagues from Fresno COG, Denise and Brenda, for dedicating some time to get the webinar off the ground. Additionally, we have a panel from the Allensworth Progressive Association that I do want to make sure that we recognize for being so generous with their time and their knowledge to be with us this morning and to give us an opportunity to learn about the Allensworth community and perhaps add some resources or tools to our toolboxes as planners to implement more equitable land use policies and view things from maybe a different lens or perspective. For those of you that are AICP, this session is eligible for CM. The CM number is 9291488. And I just realized that we don't have a chat box function, but please feel free to reach out if you need that number. It's also on the APA website, but again, it's 9291488. So without holding us up any further, I would like to warmly and excitedly welcome our panel of speakers this morning. We have Denise Kadara, Coyote Kadara, Reverend Dennis Hudson, and Dr. Robert Michael here with us. So welcome everybody. Coyote, we can go ahead and get started. You are muted.
It won't be like this for the rest of this webinar. Good morning again. We are privileged to have all of you be part of this webinar today to learn a little bit more about our community. My name is Coyote Kadara. I've been a resident in the community. My wife and I have been residents here officially since 2010, but we've been part of the community since 1979, when her mother and Dennis's mother decided to move here. So we've been out here essentially ever since. Allensworth is located between the Golden State Freeway 99 Golden Gate Freeway 99 and Interstate 5. We are located along Central Valley Highway, which is just smack in between those 2 freeways. The community has a population of approximately 600 people. The 2020 census says 531, but we believe 600 plus. We have approximately 150 households here. Median income, which is a point of contention to an extent, is supposed to be $53,500. Today, our population is approximately 96% Latino, approximately 3% Black, and we do have some Caucasians and Asians in our community. Part of what we plan to do today is discuss the uniqueness of our community, some of our efforts to improve quality of life in our community and similar communities in the region, and share some perspectives of planning in rural settings. Before I continue, I'd like to acknowledge the people whose land we dwell on here in Allensworth. Allensworth is on the ancestral lands of the Yokuts, which today includes the federally recognized Tachi Yokuts and the Tule River Indian tribes. Allensworth is within the traditional territory of the Wowol, the area of the beaver. Chalong was a Wowol village near present-day Allensworth that moved with the tides of Tulare Lake. Tulare Lake is the center of the Yokuts' world and their creation place, despite its destruction. Many of the Wowol arrived at the Santa Rosa Rancheria, which belongs to the Tachi Yokuts tribe. At this time, I'll ask Dr. Michael to give us a history lesson of Allensworth.
Okay, let's start the clock, and thank you, Coyote. I always tell folks when I speak that during the 35 years that I was a professor, I always had a night class, which met once a week, and it ran for 3 hours. But I won't take 3 hours of your time this morning. Thank you for joining us. And it's a privilege for me to share what information that I have about Allensworth. And you see this beautiful collage on the screen there of some of the activities that went on. But I first learned of Allensworth back in the late 70s, and up in the upper left-hand corner, I'm sorry, is the late Dr. Alex Lark, who was at that time an associate professor of education. And he came to one of our meetings, the Black Faculty and Staff Association meeting, and was all excited about this town that's called Allensworth. And it was now recognized, or being recognized as a state historic park. And Dr. Lark's father was, in fact, a minister in Allensworth during its heyday. And so with that, I got excited as well. And it was a time in which the university had started to offer innovative courses, and in the form of 1-unit weekend courses. And it could either run Friday or Saturday or 2 weekends, or however the professor planned it out. And so our first trip to Allensworth took place on March 14th of 1981, and we borrowed a school bus from Fresno Unified. They provided the bus and the driver, and we took a group of students as well as some of the faculty and staff to Allensworth for a tour. And at that time, the only program that was taking place, or the event, was in October, the rededication, which I later changed my class to meet that time. But the first trip took place in March. And In doing some research, I found that Dr. Eleanor Ramsey had written her dissertation on Allensworth. In fact, it's titled Allensworth, A Study in Social Change. I have a copy of it that I secured from Microfiche some years ago. And in fact, when the class got off into the regular offering in the fall semester, she was invited as a speaker and came to campus from Berkeley. She was a professor at that time in sociology in Berkeley, and came and told us about her research and what was the dream deferred, as Langston Hughes once wrote. But today we see that it's a reality because people have dedicated themselves, such as Miss Nettie, I call her, the mother of Denise and Dennis. And she would meet us at the site and take the students on a tour and tell them about Allensworth. And so what resulted from that was a book, but you can't see it now. Oh, maybe you can. I see it in my picture. Anyhow, this is a 40-page booklet that I received funding from Anheuser-Busch or Donnie G. Sales, a local distributor, and it's titled A Pictorial History of Allensworth, a Unique Black Town. And they paid for 1,000 copies to be made, in which we sent a copy to each of the libraries, county libraries throughout California. I think we have 58 libraries. So anyhow, that's in the upper right-hand corner is a picture of Dr. Ramsey. And the other pictures are at the entrance of Allensworth with my class, and then we were walking through a tour of Allensworth with the docent. At that time, the houses, I guess up until COVID, the buildings, the homes and other structures were open for tours. And they had docents volunteer and take the students or visitors to the history of each of those structures. And on the lower left-hand corner is the Fresno State Black Gospel Choir. And under the directorship of Ernie Sheldon, the late Ernie Sheldon. And they sung on that day. So about Allensworth, he was born April 7th, 1842 in Louisville, Kentucky, and he died September 14th, 1914 in Monrovia at the age of 72, which we'll come back to. And he was the youngest of 13 children born to Phyllis and Levi Allensworth. His father died when he was a youngster, and his mother lived to be about, I think, 96 years old. But they were part of the Starbird plantation. And as other parents, mothers and fathers had admonished their children who were assigned as the servant of the white child. And this was a means of perpetuating slavery. So you socialize the children into both the free and the enslaved into the status of ownership and servant. And they perpetuated slavery that way. But anyhow, the parents would oftentimes admonish their children who were assigned as a servant to a free child or the master's child or the owner's child to play school, and they would teach you everything that they had learned. And then sometimes, in fact, they would accompany their child to school, which Allensworth did, and they would stand outside the window of the schoolhouse, and they were able to hear the lesson that was taking place. And that way they were able to get some education. But then it was prohibited, and it was always done in secrecy, but if it was found out, then punishment was given to the child. And even to the parents, and sometimes they would sell the members of the family in order to break them up or to teach a lesson, as they called it, to the other enslaved person. But Allensworth attempted many times to escape unsuccessfully. He was sold many times and ended up in New Orleans, where he, because of his statue, became a racehorse jockey. And that was one of the things that occurred on plantations, where planters would get together and wager their horses and their jockeys against each other. In fact, in the 1890s, Isaac Murphy dominated the Kentucky Derby. And then shortly after that, because of his skills, African Americans were banned from riding, but participating in the Kentucky Derby. And we know, if you watched it this last time, over 100,000 people were just there at the stadium, in addition to those who were watching on TV. But finally, he did escape and took refuge behind the Union line and joined the U.S. Navy and served between 1863 and 1865, and received an honorable discharge on April 4th of 1865. This was a time when, of course, President Lincoln had signed the Emancipation Proclamation, but it was a presidential order, and it wasn't until the 13th, 14th, 15th Amendment that Allensworth and others realized their freedom. In other words, the 13th Amendment abolished slavery or any form of servitude except for imprisonment. The 14th Amendment provided for due process, equal protection, and made former enslaved persons full citizen. So Allensworth, because of the 3/5 Dred Scott case, became a full citizen. And that took a lot of burden from his back and allowed him the freedom to move about, in which he had sought before. And then the 15th Amendment provided for the right to vote for men only. And it wasn't until the 1920s, the 19th Amendment, that women received the right to vote. And we'll see that Allensworth, the town, became a voting district, and in fact, under the leadership of Allensworth. And he, in fact, one of his brothers and himself operated a store, a restaurant, for some time. In 1871, Allensworth was ordained a minister, a preacher at the Fifth Street Baptist Church in Louisville. And shortly after that, well, a few years after that, in 1877, September 20th, he married his sweetheart, Josephine Allensworth, and they had two children, Eva and Nella. And Nella lived to be 65 and Eva 88. In fact, his wife lived to be 83. Allensworth was killed when he was just 72 years old. But the word got out that there was no African-American leadership or chaplain that was assigned to the 24th Infantry and the Army. And Allensworth had by then re-enlisted in the Army and spent 20 years there. But he wrote this eloquent letter, and that's contained in Dr. Ramsey's dissertation, making an appeal to President Grover Cleveland to assign him as the chaplain, and which he did. And he was given the responsibility for their spiritual health and well-being. And he served them quite well, and would retire in 1906 as the highest ranking African-American in the armed services at that time. He then began to travel across the country, giving lectures and preaching at different churches in an effort to recruit former servicemen and their families to relocate at this race colony. Now, the race colonies were not new because after Reconstruction and Jim Crow laws that came in, the grandfather clause, literacy test, and all the obstacles that were put in place to try to nullify the vote of African Americans that were guaranteed under the 15th Amendment. He continued to the quest to build a Black colony. There's a book that's titled 20 Black Towns, and it talks about the Black towns in Oklahoma and Kansas, Oklahoma, Bowling, Langston, Oklahoma, Nicodemus, Kansas. And so Allensworth, by that time, had met with a friend, William Payne, who was an educator from Ohio. And this was shortly after the Plessy case of 1896, in which the Supreme Court ruled against Homer Plessy, who had taken a seat in the white section of the streetcar, of the bus, the train, I'm sorry, in Louisiana. And they ruled that separate but equal was constitutional. And that remained the law of the land until the Brown case in 1954. Well, and meeting with William Payne, who was in fact a lot younger than Allensworth, but he had the same ambitions. And so the two of them, along with three other gentlemen, formed the California Colony and Home Promoting Association. And that was followed by the Allensworth Progressive Association, which is the governing body, became the governing body of Allensworth. And so the town, the area that was known as Toledo was then changed in honor of its founder and the man who spearheaded the effort to Allensworth. And Allensworth was located, he was looking for an area in California out of the South, as there were many African Americans moving from the South into the North. And in fact, Booker T. Washington, who was an idol of Allensworth, he sort of patterned his philosophy after Booker Washington in terms of industrial vocational education, or pull yourself up by your own bootstraps or become self-sufficient. And once you have proven yourself, then you will be accepted. Of course, that was Washington's philosophy, which he was criticized by W.E.B. Du Bois, who was the leader at that time. But anyhow, Allensworth found the land in the San Joaquin Valley that was fertile in richness in soil and was an ideal location out of the South to start this race colony. And so they met with the Pacific Farming Company in the very complicated land purchasing and allocations, and the Pacific Farming Company promised to deliver water in the capacity as needed by the resident, but the town was growing fast because of the appeal out of the South. And although it had 4 artesian wells, it soon did not meet the needs of the growing population. And in fact, if you go online, you at the Department of Parks and Recreation, you'll find methods in which you can access the history of Allensworth through videos that are posted on YouTube. And in fact, if you go to Allensworth, you can even do a self-guided tour, and through an app that you can download on your phone, and you don't need a internet to do so. But the first building that was built in Allensworth was a schoolhouse, and they raised about $5,000 to build that, and it became the center of the town. And the church that was built there followed. But it was not only for education, the primary and high school students, but also as a meeting place for the various clubs, the APA, the debating society. They had a theater club, they had a glee club, and of course, commencement exercises. One of the other, couple of other dates I want to mention before I close out. In 1914, Allensworth became a judicial district with Oscar Over becoming the Justice of the Peace and William Dotson the constable or the local police. Not that they had crime there, not that they had a lot of court cases, but to recognize a fully blown community. They wanted to institute that, and especially with the voting district that was established in Allensworth at that time. Various businesses, including I should mention the Tulare branch of the library, which was land donated from Mrs. Allensworth in honor, a memory of her mother, Mary Dickinson's, and it's called the Mary Dickinson Library. It was recognized as a postal district, and Mary Jane Bickers was elected as the first postmistress. Aside from the economic base, the shops that were built there, the barber shop, the beauty salon, the drugstore, the general store, the Allensworth Hotel, a lot of farming took place. But the problem with the farming was that the soil contained a lot of alkaline, which made it difficult to grow. And in fact, Dennis and I were talking about him farming down there now. And then the water that was promised was not delivered. One of the other big setbacks was that they had proposed establishing a industrial vocational educational center, and it had the support of local politicians, a representative from the state of California in Tulare and Fresno, but when it reached the floor for a vote, it was voted down. Finally, in that same year, in 1914, Colonel Allensworth was on a trip to Monrovia to deliver a message, and he was struck as he got off the streetcar and died the next day from his injuries. I think my time is probably up already, gone past that. But again, the historic period is between 1908 and 1918. And the process or the idea which we'll hear more about from the other presenters is to resurrect the town as it was during its heyday. And I think there were over 300 people who lived in Allensworth at that time. And they continued to do so until the arsenic was found in the water in the 1960s and the alkaline in the soil. And one of the draftsmen, Cornelius Pope, who worked for the Department of Parks and Recreation, found out about this and waged a campaign to have it recognized for its historical and cultural significance. And that is what we celebrate today 4 times a year, as I mentioned before. And so there's more, but due to time restraints, I'll end it on that note.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Dr. Michael. At this time, we'll ask Pastor Hudson to talk about Nettie Morrison, a trailblazer.
Hello, everyone. It's a pleasure to speak with you today on Allensworth, and one of the persons that kind of held this place together till this point now. My mother, Nettie Morrison, came to Allensworth in 1979, but we lived in Los Angeles, and she relocated from Los Angeles to a place called Wasco, and she was living there and had a bakery, and she heard about Allensworth while living there in Wasco. Now, it's interesting, it's important to note that Allensworth is about 150 miles north of Los Angeles. And while attending school there, never heard of Allensworth. And there are people in the Central Valley who never heard of Allensworth. But my mother chose to move here in 1979. And we all said, why? There's nothing there. And she really wanted to be a part of something bigger than her. She wanted to make a difference in her life and in this world. And so she came to Allensworth, and as soon as she got here, the residents said, God sent you here to help take care of us. And she did. She started a lot of programs. She started the Friends of Allensworth. She established the events that take place to this day in the State Historic Park. She started the commodities program, where FarmLink brings produce and food to help folks who are in need of food. And I remember one day talking with my mother. She was concerned about some things, and I said to her, "Well, Mommy, Colonel Allensworth was a minister. He was a chaplain in the Army, and he was a pastor of a church in Monrovia. And so, with him being a minister, there was a spiritual presence. Now he is gone, and there is no spiritual presence in Allensworth." And so I was pastoring a church in Los Angeles, and I said, if I came up and did a worship service for Thanksgiving, 1980, I said, if you invited people, would they come? And she said, yeah. And I said, well, why don't you invite some people to your house, and I'll do a worship service? And I did. And would you believe that was the beginning of the church today in Allensworth? It started in her house. And then as it got bigger, they moved into the State Historic Park. There was a church there in the park. And so they had worship services there, until such time as my mother started raising money, and others, I guess, helped. And they bought a building here in town, and erected the church there in town, so that they were no longer governed by the state park rules. So now my mom had done all of that, and the last big thing that she did was she one of the community organizations in Delano, I believe, told her that they heard that the County Board of Supervisors was going to approve 2 mega dairies. You're talking about 15,000 head of cattle. I don't know if that's in one or if that was total for both, but there are going to be these huge dairies right outside the park, right next to Allensworth. And you know about odor pollution, you know about ground contamination with all of the feces and the urine and stuff like that, and the flies. So all of that would have destroyed this community. As a matter of fact, it would have been fit for nothing but to raise it. And so my mother started working and organizing people in the community, and dealing with other agencies, others who were supportive of Allensworth. And they fought this and were successful in its defeat. And it enabled legislation to be made at the state level, stating that no cattle, large number of cattle, can be within a 2.5-mile radius of the Colonel Allensworth State Historic Park. And so that was a major accomplishment. So much of what has taken place in Allensworth had a lot to do with my mother. And I believe, as the people said, God sent her here to help take care of the people. And now I'll kind of tell you a little more about the vision behind Allensworth as it is as we are doing things to this day. Now, my wife and I, we own 60 acres of land, and we called it Tack Farm. Um, and we bought the land in 2007 when I retired from the Air Force. I was a chaplain in the military as well. So we retired and we bought this acreage in Allensworth. My mom used to say, Dennis, there's this man who owns all this farmland and he's starting to sell it. Would you be interested in buying it? And because if you bought land, then we can still own some of the land in the community. Outsiders were buying up the land. And so I talked with him and we bought 60 acres of land and put in a well. Okay, so now the purpose behind Tack Farm was to create an economic engine. And let me pause for a moment and kind of say to you, one day I was in the car with my twin sister Denise and Coyote, which is her other half. I guess I used to be the other half, but now he's the other half. And so we were in the car, shaking his head. We were in the car going somewhere, and I was still in the military at this point, and I was visiting, and they had come down from the Half Moon Bay area where they were living and working, and 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 as we were going somewhere and driving through the town, I said, nothing has changed. Everything still looks the same. And, and listen to this. Why doesn't the government do something? As soon as I said that, remember, I'm a minister. The voice of God said to me, why don't you do something? And that kind of took me aback for a moment. Now I'm calculating the risk. And so of course, I agreed. Now, I was working on a master's of business administration degree, and I had to do a capstone project, which is like a thesis. But I believe in doing practical projects, something that you can submit to be graded, evaluated, and then you can use it later with the benefit of the instructors and maybe some of the class guidance. So I'm sitting up late one night saying, Lord, I have to do this project. Reveal to me what to do. And God said to me, you've researched chicken farming. You have researched fish farming. Now go research rabbit farming. And I did. I started researching it, and I researched it for several hours that night, late that night, and went to bed, woke up early the next day, and spent all day Saturday working on this. And by the time I finished, I realized that if you grew rabbits and you gave them organic food like organic, and that manure, which is dry, is ideal for growing red worms. And you can also use and as you do that, now you can use the compost and you can apply it to the farm, and all of the vegetables that you grow then become organic. And so it's a closed loop system. Each one builds off of the other, but it's self-contained. And now this closed loop system is sustainable, and it lends itself to an agricultural cooperative. And so when you implement something like this in a community like Allensworth that has been deprived and denied an opportunity to progress and contribute to the region, because what the decline was not it did not happen by the people themselves. These were outside forces that caused this town to decline. And so Now, this enables us to inspire a pride and a hope within the community residents. And so the farm then, or a project like this, then becomes an economic engine by generating employment opportunities and other forms of economic growth. It enables us to educate people in agriculture, sustainable and regenerative agriculture. And as people learn this, then as we want to attract people, veterans in particular, but he was a veteran, I'm a veteran, so veterans, so that now we can have housing development, and people can have smaller farms and contribute to a cooperative. And by doing such, we can then help strengthen the State Historic Park and draw more attention and help build the State Historic Park. So that's the vision behind what we're doing. And Denise and Coyote will talk more about programming and other types of resourcing that's being done.
Thank you, Dennis. And Denise will now continue with the Allensworth Progressive Association and some other items.
Yes, the Allensworth Progressive Association is the original governing body for the town of Allensworth. It was founded in 1908. It was resurrected back in 1997. It's a 501c3, and its mission is to carry out community and economic development activities, as well as recreational, community health, social activities that will improve the quality of life for Allensworth residents. Allensworth Progressive Association has utilized and taken advantage of every opportunity to plan for and create a better Allensworth. Our community plan is important to us because we initially had efforts being done by many outside entities. Center Race, Poverty and the Environment, CRPE, and Environmental Justice Group helped us back in 2010 do a community planning effort. We had United Way in 2012 help us with some community building. We had CSET work with us doing some community planning exercises and advocacy for our residents. We had Self-Help Enterprise come along in 2017 and update our Hamlet plan. But throughout those times where we had community support from the agencies and them helping us to identify how we would address our community needs, several priorities were identified and have continued to be discussed amongst the community. They included gas, sewer, water, improve the water system, roads, housing, youth programs, internet service, among others. But those items that I just mentioned to you continue to be priority items. And so when I realized the plan that the county or Self-Help Enterprise did on behalf of the county, that it was a Hamlet plan and keeping us in the same box of our community, a Hamlet plan, we lack essential services and adequate infrastructure to be a thriving community. I just didn't think that that was good for us all those years to still be in the same spot. But we had received money from the State Water Resources Board, $3.8 million to do a water system. We had received funding to help with smart meters. We had done study on a sewer system. With the high-speed rail coming in, we had a new road that was done on Avenue 24. We had AT&T putting in an internet system. We had several activities happening, and it came to me, it's like, wait a minute. We have progress here. We can begin to talk about a community plan versus a Hamlet plan. And that's what initiated us starting our work on the community plan. And in so doing, we just continue to build off of the resources that are here in the community. When you think about Allensworth from where we are, the State Historic Park is a treasure. Being in the Tulare Lake along the shoreline, and some restored wetlands around here, we have an ecosystem. But what we lack is an economy. So these efforts that we have come up with and are moving forward is to address those issues. We got our county framework approved. We got our planning, community plan and framework approved by the county in 2022. And we're still working with USC, some of the professor there and some of her team on finalizing the community plan, which we will move forward to get a part of the general plan. Next slide. We also, back in 2022, had some discussions with some people, and they suggested to us that one of the assembly people wanted to fund Allensworth community, the town of Allensworth, $55 million. They asked us if we had a proposal. We said yes. We had just started our community plan process. And so what that did was open up the door to us for us to submit a funding request to the Legislative Black Caucus for funding. We submitted the proposal request for 55 million, 40 million was awarded to Allensworth. It was directed to the state park. We, since we prepared the proposal, we went back to the Legislative Black Caucus Appropriation Committee with the help of some of our partners to get some lobbying support to make sure that if $40 million was going to come into town and Allensworth Progressive Association did the work, then certainly we should benefit for some of those monies. And we were able to get $11.6 million for that effort for some of our community work. Next slide.
All right. Our approach to planning and community development is kind of based on 4 premises. The first one, looking at our community, our strengths, and our capacity. Looking at agricultural processes that we are undertaking, regenerative agriculture and related water reducing climate conscious processes. We have the state park and habitat restoration and conservation. These are all things within our reach, and looking at it from a holistic point of view, you develop a better plan. We'll now move on and talk about some accomplishments, some things we're still working on, and some things that we see happening in the near and longer future.
We have our historic Allensworth Cemetery. The cemetery, when part of Allensworth became a part of the park, the request was to have the cemetery, the historical cemetery, a part of it. That was not considered. But the historical cemetery is quite significant to us because many of the founding peoples and the original residents of the town site were buried in that property. The historical cemetery was originally 10 acres. It was plowed up. We had to stop that, but the farmers were plowing it up. You could go out there and see skeletons and so forth. Nettie Morrison wanted to see this historical cemetery preserved. In fact, she's laid to rest out there. But I think it was in 2020, we spoke with our county board of supervisors. He helped us initiate that process with the support from the state, the Tulare County planning staff. They helped us get through the LAFCO process where the Allensworth Community Services District was able to acquire the historical cemetery, and gosh, within a year. I mean, it moved so quickly. But where we are right now, we own the Community Services District owns the cemetery, but when they received it, there was no funding that came with it. Funding is being sought right now for restoration of the cemetery. We also have the other part of the cemetery that's not historic that we want to use for community burials. So we're going through the process with the policies and so forth for that, and continuing to seek funding right now for fencing of the historical cemetery, landscaping, mapping, and all of those efforts that are underway. Our affordable energy program, it got underway with AB 2672 with Assemblyman Pereira. That he authored that bill in 2014. It was signed by Governor Brown in 2015. The Public Utility Commission held several public hearings within the different communities where the pilot project would take place. 2009, the Public Utility Commission approved of the projects. Residents anticipated getting gas, but with the governor pushing for dealing with climate change, electrification was what was ordered. And communities like Allensworth received $500,000 upgrade per house.
5,000.
$5,000 upgrade per household to include electrical appliances into their household. So this was one of the start of the projects that helped us realize that we were on our way to community planning. And so you can take over the next slide, Connie.
Well, one of the, I think Dennis touched on this earlier, but one of the things that the Progressive Association is also looking at is a teaching and innovation farm lab. And it's basically looking at reimagining agriculture in the Central Valley. We're talking about regenerative agricultural techniques and opportunity to learn, provide an opportunity to conduct research on innovative agricultural and related processes, and at the same time serve as an economic engine. Going on from there, we have developed the Josephine Beginning Farmer Training Program, Josephine named after Mrs. Josephine Allensworth, Mrs. Allensworth. It's a hands-on regenerative agriculture training program that commenced. The first class was in October of last year. That was the Explorer program, and the official 7-week program, 7-month program started in February of this year. We basically looking at opportunities to train folks in the community, in the region, and have them become their own managers of their future. So that's part of the training program that we currently undertaking.
We also have the Tulare Lake Project-Based Learning Program. This is a program that got started back in 2014. We were working with Tulare Basin Wildlife Partnership and the Bureau of Land Management. They helped us got the program started, training young people ages 14 to 18 to learn about their environment, environmental justice, climate change, water quality, drought, many of the issues that we've been talking about that impact our community. Healthy soils, as we're talking about doing regenerative practices, that they are familiar with that. And each session is a 4-week session. They get a $500 stipend when they complete the program. And they actually do a actual presentation and a model for the work that they've done for those 4 weeks. So this year we're starting off and we're going with 7th to 9th, 7th and 8th graders, and really looking forward to educating them. Many of our young people that have participated in this program, and I would say we've had at least 80+ students participate in the program during this time, have gone off to UCLA, Fresno State, Cal State Bakersfield, Bakersfield Community College. They're pursuing higher education, and we're very grateful to be a part of, I have a little part of that effort, but growing community leaders here, educating them, then they are not afraid to go out and take that leadership role and to continue to advocate for their community. So we've been very fortunate to do that. We've also had the watershed restoration efforts where we deal with headwaters to the slough, which is where Allensworth is, and is still remaining this area as the last undammed river in California. And our regional efforts are aimed at a holistic restoration for the watershed, beneficial wildlife, conservation, and preservation for the community and the region.
Some of our issues, which are, kind of the same for a whole lot of communities like ours. We have some major constraints. We have right now our community services district, which is the water purveyor for the community, has 2 wells 3 miles east of the community. Why? Because most of the groundwater within the confines of the community are significantly high in arsenic. We've seen levels as high as 300 parts per billion in one of the wells out here. At the same time, you have approximately 600 people. The CSD has a storage tank of approximately 40,000 gallons. All studies have shown so far that we need a minimum of at least 500,000 gallons of storage. We've had some fires in the not too distant past where fire trucks would come in and within minutes they've basically used up all the water we have for the community and they're backing out, going to adjoining communities looking for water. In 2021, the district, the Community Services District, received a grant of $3.8 million for a new well and a new 500,000 gallon storage tank. That was 2021. Here we are, several years after the fact. We have the money in hand. Several years after the fact, we're still addressing some issues with the state Department of Fish and Wildlife and the U.S. Fish and Wildlife. We also have some concerns or issues with the site where the tank is supposed to go. So there's some delay. But we are persevering because we know it will be done and it has to be done. I mentioned arsenic in groundwater. We were in contact with Dr. Gadgil, or we were put in contact with Dr. Gadgil at the University of California in Berkeley. Dr. Gadgil developed processes or technology to remove arsenic from groundwater. In his first and second labs out here in Allensworth, his technology has shown that the 300 parts per billion of arsenic in one of the wells could be reduced to less than 2 parts per billion or non-detect. Technology basically uses iron electrodes inserted in arsenic-laden water. The electrodes are charged with electricity, create rust. The arsenic molecules bond onto the rust, settle. And you skim the water from the top and you have minimal to no arsenic left. Understandably, looking at a large-scale system may not be as cost-effective at this point. So we are looking at this technology being incorporated or attached to the domestic water supply from the community. The domestic water supply right now, we're seeing 4 to 7 parts per billion, and in some cases, we've seen exceedances of the 10 parts per billion maximum contaminant level. So we're basically saying, and this is Dr. Gadgil working with us, basically saying, what if we take this system that can reduce 300 parts per billion to less than 2 or non-detect? What if we place this system on your domestic water supply that has 4 to 7 parts per billion? Bottom line, we will end up with domestic water that's currently not drinkable for a lot of people because they go out and buy water. So we may end up having that opportunity where we create kiosks in the community where, in lieu of community members driving 30, 40 miles round trip to go get water, maybe, well, not maybe, they will be able to purchase that water here in town at significantly less cost than what they currently pay. This will be a community service to all of our residents. That's where we're headed with Dr. Gadgill's technology at this point. We've all heard about the Sustainable Groundwater Management Act and the requirements and what it means in the region. And in our case, the Tri-County Water Authority is the groundwater sustainability agency for us. And Allensworth happens to be the only populated center within the GSA. What privilege we have to work with an organization like this that's now looking at repurposing land that would go fallow anyway for the benefit of our community. So as part of our discussions with Tri-County, and they do have a plan in place, some of it funded, we looking at an additional 500,000 gallon storage tank on the west side of our community. We're still talking water security. The GSA is looking at 2 40-acre retention basins just west of our community. And this is land owned by the Deer Creek Stormwater District, and Tri-County has agreements with them to make this happen on our behalf. So we're looking at 2 40-acre retention basins just west of our community. And for those that may recall, this time, about this time last year, we were going through some challenges with atmospheric rivers, flooding, and stuff like that. Most of that water for us just flowed away. In this case, in the future, when those things, events happen again, we will have the opportunity to capture some of this water for recharge and for the beneficial uses in our community and in the general area. Part of what the GSA is looking at on our behalf is a community park. Imagine all the kids we have in town, no place to go. They can't go down the road to the state park because there are different requirements. So our children have no place to go. They play on the streets for those that want to brave it. And the last part of this is we've been talking about a sewage treatment facility, and I'll talk about that a little bit more in a bit here. But as part of the land that the GSA is dedicating to programs and projects on our behalf, we also have the opportunity to site a treatment facility, a sewage treatment facility out there. And benefit of something like that, we'll talk about a little bit more, but what a privilege to work with this GSA. I talked about sewer treatment issues, solid waste, so some of the issues we have with disposal of wastewater. Right now, all homes in our community rely on septic tanks, and I believe it's universal. We have some enclaves around us, all these tiny little communities around us. We are all on septic systems. In our case here in Allensworth, I believe, not that I believe, I know that the groundwater is high in some areas. Our elementary school has an above ground system. where some of that waste is that a liquid is pumped above ground. And the reason for that is because of the high water levels, especially during the rain, when it rains. We believe some of those leach lines from the septic systems are sitting in groundwater, makes them totally ineffective and creates other unnecessary problems for groundwater and for us as a community. So we are looking at a system that will allow us to capture all this wastewater and treat it. Our Community Services District has completed a lot of work on this. We have a feasibility study completed. We have the environmental impact document has been certified. And the biggest issue when we have a small community and you put in some infrastructure that you have to operate and maintain is major. So we're looking at the possibility of moving to a regional management system where we look at the region as a whole. Who else can help us as opposed to us getting our own personnel? Can we share personnel from other areas? So those are all part of the issues we are addressing in terms of economies of scale and how we move sewer treatment system forward. The system, the secondary, the effluent from the system will go into the ponds or the basin that we talked about earlier, and will be all part of the recharge opportunity that we have here in the region, in our community and the region.
Okay, and I know we're getting close to the end, so I'll kind of wrap up here. Talking about our community resiliency and civic center. Allensworth is in a food desert. There's nothing here. We have, according to the state park, at least 70,000 people that come into the park, and when they leave, there's not a dollar or a dime left into the community. So our community resiliency civic center will include a space for gathering, for anchored by a medical facility. We currently are in a 1,800 square foot facility that is an old 40 Army barracks. Is 40 built in the 1940s. So we're looking to change that and create opportunities within our community center to where we can have funding. We can have our own little cottage store. When people come into the park, they can come down and buy things. We're hoping to have the electrical outlets for charging vehicles. We have a lot of activity that's being planned to improve the quality of life here for our residents and create an economy for us. It's been untapped. When you think about our state historic park and where we are located, we have a treasure here in our community, and it's an untapped treasure. It has not been utilized to its fullest potential. There's no reason to have 70,000 visitors in the park and the community doesn't benefit from them leaving a dollar. So we're creating our own economy. So when people come into town, they will be able to come to our farm, buy produce. They'll be able to come and get a bite to eat. And we're also working on doing a cultural plan, a cultural district, a planning district. We've done this, and it will be incorporated in our community plan. Basically looking at how we started off with this process and what we submitted to the Legislative Black Caucus. We submitted a program to them called the Center for Understanding. It would be a facility that would be at the State Historic Park to identify all the cultures within this particular area, from the indigenous population, the African American population, the Filipino population, and the Latino population. Identifying a facility that would have an amphitheater that we can go in and in chronological order see and learn the history of the populations that have been within this area. When you have an education about that, an understanding, hopefully, our hope is you get an appreciation for the diversity of the cultures within this area, and that we all realize that we have more in common than not. And so that's some of the work we're doing. And our main point is to make Allensworth an attractive destination for ecotourism, as I mentioned, for agritourism, for the history and cultural tourism, and create economic vitality for Allensworth and Southwest Tulare County. And then what our last piece is on public education. Colonel Allensworth had this vision of Allensworth being the Tuskegee of the West. Back, I think Dr. Michaels mentioned it. That process was tried back then, and it was not allowed to go forth. But with the efforts of our beginning farmer training program, our project-based learning program, the public curriculum that we have in our schools that is being provided by UC Berkeley staff, we are growing our programming. And then with housing development underway, we're developing 100 to 300 housing units, will increase the population size here. So our K-8 school will go through K-14 and provide that vocational training to where that vision that the Colonel had will come to pass. And then just lastly, to share our community engagement efforts since the flooding experience has just reconnected all of our residents. We've developed cafecitos where our community members are getting stipends to help train other residents, to have storytelling sessions, to provide topics for people to learn more about water, our community center, and all the different programming that we're doing here. So they are actively engaged. And our co-op programming, they're learning that whole process too. So everything we're doing is community driven, and it will be community owned and operated. So we will have our own economic development programming here and have our own tax base, which is what all this work has been about. Our last slide is just to show you all of the partners that we have. We've recently added to our partner list the American Red Cross, the Community Adaptation Program that they have recently launched, the California Endowment, California Cal Wellness Foundation, Community Council Foundation. Many of these agencies are coming to us, offering us support because they see the work we're doing. We're not just a pilot program, we are a model for many rural communities. And our goal has been to demonstrate that things can happen when you work from the bottom up. So that's our message, and we're thankful for this opportunity to present to you today. Back to you, Kelsey.
Thank you.
Great. That was wonderful. Thank you all so much. I wanted to use these last few minutes we have to open it up to any questions that any of the attendees might have for the panelists. If you do have a question, please use the raise hand function, and we will give you the permission to unmute yourself to ask your question. So Brenda, I think I'm going to have to employ you here to help me see who's raising their hand.
Yeah, no problem.
So while we wait for people to maybe get the courage to ask their questions, I actually have a couple. So I'll start if that's okay. I wrote down a few, so let me see, which one do I want to do? So I'll start with something maybe a little bit generic, but regarding that last slide, Denise, I wanted to ask, and the purpose of this question is really as a planner and a planning practitioner to learn, you know, how to be supportive and where support can come from. So my question is, what were some of your, and your meaning the Allensworth community, your biggest supporters of your community planning efforts and all of the efforts being done in Allensworth, and maybe some of like the unlikely supporters or unlikely allies, or some of the organizations that you maybe didn't hear of going into this that ended up being, you know, big Allensworth cheerleaders?
Well, I would start off by saying the office of Kat Taylor. Kat Taylor came out here October 2017 on a social justice tour, and wanted to know about Allensworth. And we provided information, and she came back in 2018. She was impressed with our work, and she wanted us to do a dog and pony show. She bought film crew and everything, and we did our dog and pony show. October 2019, she came back and helped us with our Make a Difference Day cleanup program. And by September 21, she offered us $100,000 to build a building capacity, because she believed in us. She saw the work we were doing, and she saw that we needed that capacity. And so that ignited us and got us started. I think she actually gave us a little bit over $400,000. So between that 2.5 year period, we never had to fill out an application or anything. She just did what any good citizen would do, support people that are trying to support themselves. And so we were very grateful. That was what ignited our programming. We've had California Endowment just call us and say, we want to meet with you, gave us $50,000 before we even had the flooding, and then gave us $50,000 during the flooding, and just recently submitted our names. And we were selected to receive communications, technical support. You know, these are the efforts that are just coming across. Cal Wellness was going to come out and do a tour with us. They said they were going to give us $6,000, but they gave us far more than that. The Community Council Foundation just gave us a $50,000 grant just a couple of weeks ago. We didn't ask them for that. All we had to do was just sign something. So when you're about doing good work for a community, other people see it and they want to be a part of it, and the energy and be a part of something moving forward. And so we've garnered a lot of support that way. Self-help enterprises has always been there for us. We've had support from our county. Our planning department has been working with us on many of the grant applications we've submitted. And so the support is coming from all around. The good part is we know how to fit it in with our programming, and it's all been beneficial for the good of the community, and most importantly, for the good of Southwest Tulare County. In this particular area that's lacked economic vitality since it was founded and was thriving and successful. We're bringing that back again, and our theme now is Allensworth Rising.
TDFA, Denise.
Incredible. Thank you. Brenda, I think you're muted.
Apologies. We have a question from Carolina.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so very much for the presentation. It was so great to hear all of the great things that are happening. I was also really happy to hear about the EV charging that it looks like you're moving towards. And I was wondering if, from a transportation planning standpoint, if there are other kinds of things that are also being considered, like different trails or, pedestrian elements or things like that, that can really help sustainable transportation in your area.
Well, as you heard me say, ecotourism. So that's a part of what we're all about. We've been working now since 2013-14. We're trying to do a trail from Colonel Allensworth State Historic Park to Atwell Island, the restored wetlands. And so we marked out a trail, but we can't go too far with that because we have the indigenous population that we need to make sure that we're not stepping in on some of their ancestral land. But for the parks part, we've been told here recently that area, we can begin to look for the trail. What we're talking about, my husband mentioned earlier about working with Tri-County and doing recreation. That's passive recreation, where we will have a trail. So we're doing that where we have where the farm will be located, and the services will also include commercial kitchen and restaurants and so forth, and tours there. We also will have electrical outlets for electrical vehicles at that site. We want to do the same thing within our park system, to where when we go into the park, we don't have those buses and cars all within the historical museum. We want to orient that programming away from for the entryway. So when people come into the park, it's a walking museum. So even in all of our programming, we're dealing with climate resiliency. We're dealing with community resiliency to make sure that climate adaptation is a part of all of the work that we're doing, from solar panels, agrivoltaics, many efforts. It's not just the old-fashioned way of doing things. We are communities is looking at where we are today and where we need to be, and we're making all of our program address those items that are significant and that the governor has actually called for. So we're in an alignment with what our governor has dictated for us and moving forward with it.
Thank you. We have a question from Howard Ward.
Hello to all the panelists. Basically, my question is, and I think this is a problem for all rural communities like yours. What are you going to put in place to try to keep the young people around? Because generally they leave, rural communities because you don't have the bars and all the things that young people like to do. So anybody on the panel, if you could give an idea. Thank you.
Well, I mean, I'm going to step in since I'm unmuted and say that we have trained we're training our youth. Last year, when we had a community meeting, a town hall meeting, if you will, on our community center to get input about it, one of the youth in the meeting, a young adult in her early 20s, said, this community center is not going to be built for another couple of years. What are you going to do for the youth today? Said, we need some activities for our youth. And he said, well, okay, step up to the plate and give us your ideas. And so she did. And so this past fall, we had our first fall festival. It was organized by the youth in the community. The youth in the community are participating in our cafecitos, community action committees. They are participating. We have an art program that Tulare County Art Consortium has provided to us to deal with mental health as a result of COVID and the impact it's had on our young people. And so our youth are participating in that. We're doing storytelling. We're doing everything we can to keep the cultures connected with each other. So our community, our youth are engaged in all of the activities that we're doing right now. We have not left them out at all. They're driving the forces in many instances. And so we're very grateful for that. We have a running club of a bunch of young kids that just started track and field. They came together last September. Not any of those kids knew anything about track, but between 6 and 9-year-olds. And by the end of October, all of them had qualified to go to national AAU cross country. And 3 of them came back in 7th place in the nation, 2 10 in the nation, and the others in the top 25. And we're on our way to dealing with the track meets right now to where some of them are qualified. So those youth activities are involving the parents, and the kids are there. When we started off with the track program, it only had 9 kids. Now we have over 37 kids. So we're embarking upon programming that's going to keep our community together, and especially our youth.
Thank you.
Okay, we have another question from Professor Kapoor.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
First of all, I want to say it was an incredible presentation, and my colleague, Professor Michael, gave a great history lesson. Thank you very much, Bob, for your presentation. Learned a lot, and it was very wonderful presentation by all the speakers. My just minor observation is, I did not see many trees growing up over there in the land. Is there any way to grow more trees? I know you have a water problem. If there is some way to plant more trees, that might actually change the climate also eventually. So that was my just minor observation. If you are planning to grow more trees actually on that land. Thank you.
Yes, there are plans to have what we call quote unquote savanna areas, which will be trees and shrubs. Plus, we've had discussions with high-speed rail. The track is running west of our community, and we want to create a buffer from the trains, buffer from dust, noise, and we've had discussions about planting trees. That will come subsequently after the sewer treatment facility is in place. That way, at least we have preliminary source of water to water those trees. So these are all in the planning stages, things we've thought about, but just can't do yet until that next step takes place.
And,
And-
go ahead.
Yes, but I want to also mention that a lot of the work we've done, well, for us it's pro bono, is something that could or maybe not replicated in other communities. We come with some expertise. This is not something that you see, this is not something common in almost every community like ours. The key thing for planners is when you look at communities like this, step out of the urban planning, quote unquote, city planning mentality. There are things that need to happen grassroots. You have to talk to the people. You have to get agreements at the local level before you move forward. It's not one where you basically plan in the office, develop a plan. Yeah, you have community meetings and stuff like that, but you're talking to a lot of educated people in a city or urban context. When you come out to places like this, you have to be able to get the context of what you want to do directly from the people. And for those planners that look at getting into rural planning like this, it's very important to find those community leaders. In a lot of cases, they don't know what the heck you're talking about, but they know what they want to see happen in their communities. How do you get to them? You walk around, you talk to community members, find those people that have the loudest voices for good, and provide your expertise. Give them that expertise that we are providing to our community. Give them that support so they can make decisions about those next steps that make their community better and create a better quality of life in those communities.
Thank you.
Our next question is from Gloria Perot Dyer.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. Yes, as a person whose family has maintained a continuous presence in Allensworth since 1953, I would like to commend everyone on the panel for their excellent presentation, particularly all the groundwork that has been done by Mr. and Mrs. Kadara, and it is extremely impressive. I would like to know if there are any timelines for the vision that you have set forth as to when the town will be functioning, fully functioning. You know, with as you had mentioned, these community facilities, you know, like cafes and restaurants, et cetera, et cetera. Is there a basic timeline?
Well, with the community center, we have a proposal that should be completed by 2026. 2026, we should have the community center up and operating. We're
Well,
actually,
that's a contingent
Upon
on
the
getting
funding.
additional funding.
we are actually applying for the federal EPA Community Change Grant, applying for $20 million, and that will be funding for the Resiliency Center. Many of these programs are underway right now. For instance, I mentioned to you about the trail within the park. We have farming efforts that are going on right now. The beginning farming training program has been going on. So implementation of these programs are coming together piece by piece. We started out with a team of the three of us, Dennis, my husband, and myself. And so in the past couple of years, we have a staff of 12 people now. We have 2 Grizzly fellows from UC Berkeley that are working with us. They've been working with us on the farming and dealing with storytelling, dealing with the plants that grow in the particular area, and a number of issues. So we have people working in all directions, and many of the programs are happening as we speak. With the farming project, I think that's 2028 that we have to have that implemented. And the programs that we have working with Tri-County Water Authority, that's underway right now. The programs we have working with the State Water Resources Board, we meet with them on a regular basis. We hope the construction project, construction bids will be happening on that soon. So as I said, Gloria, in every one of these projects that we've mentioned, they're just not plans. There's some level of work and activity that's ongoing with them.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
We have one more question. We have time. Okay. From, and I hope I'm saying your name right. Tanaya Wright.
Hello, everyone. Can you hear me?
Yes.
All right. Thank you for this presentation. It was amazing. As a neighboring community from Bakersfield, I have visited Allensworth on numerous occasions. We've had our family reunion there, I believe 3 times. So I truly, truly enjoy Allensworth. But as a planner, my question would be, myself and a few other planners outside of our place of employment are looking into an empowered youth initiative to bring planning education to youth and hopefully engage with the local education systems. And I heard you mention the Tulare Lake project. How would we be able to connect with you to help support that mission? I think it's amazing how you're integrating the youth with your program to have a vision of their future for Allensworth, and that is our goal as well. So how could we support that and something of those efforts?
Let me. Kelsey is going to be sending out slides later on. On the very last slide, it says contact us, and there's a name, Desiree Begaleos. Desiree is the Director of Program Coordination for the Allensworth Progressive Association, and she leads the training, the summer training program. So I don't know how else. I don't see a way to put any information into a chat and stuff like that. But Desiree Begaleos with the Allensworth Progressive Association is a contact for you, Tania.
And I think what you suggested here is great. We're starting our program in another week or so. So that's this summer, but next summer, perhaps there's an opportunity for you to connect with Desiree now and see how some planning activity can be a part of our next year's program. I think it would be great. The more we train, the better they can support their own communities and be the visionaries and the ones in charge of their own destiny.
Great, that's amazing. And then also I have one other question. How are the outreach efforts going with the community, sharing with the community about Allensworth? Because here locally, I know several individuals that I speak to about Allensworth have said, oh, I've never even heard of it. And I know it's just right down the road. And so they are missing, there is some kind of link missing there to get the word out and spread about Allensworth.
We're continuing to do our best to put information out. We're actually working with teams to do more outreach and to bring more people into the community. We're hoping to do more festivals in the park, art festivals, storytelling, connecting with residents, connecting with people outside of the community. All the program that we're doing here is to bring economic vitality to this region, to tap into our untapped resources, our park, our ecosystem, and any other community that would have all of this would be raking in dollars.
Right.
The state park had a general plan and a plan to address making that park a success. The dollars have not been here to make that happen, but I'm hoping with that $28 million that's there, that will be a start. In addition to that, we're doing our part to make sure that when people come into that park, they leave their dollars here in our community. So we're doing everything we can to make sure things happen along those lines.
Nice. I appreciate you all and your efforts.
I've seen Charles Allensworth's hand go up and down, and I just wondered if he did have a question. You can raise your hand if you did want to say something.
Yeah, we'd like to hear from Mr. Allensworth.
Might be appropriate. But I don't see it.
City tonight.
Gloria, did you have another question, or did I not take your hand down? I think she's good. Okay, that's all of our questions then.
All right, well, I'll close by just thanking all of the
Let me just make one
panelists.
quick comment.
Of course.
If the second to the last slide that I did not talk about, it says on Allensworth's horizon, regenerative farming, cultural arts district, ecotourism, farmers market, housing for elderly families, farmers, veterans, rural wastewater treatment, community forest, civic center, nature and community trails, solar farm, green K through 14 school facilities. These are all the things that are on the horizon for us. And every time we start down one path, another opportunity comes to ignite another portion of our work happening. So we have tentacles out in all different directions, but I can assure you they're all going for the one cause of a better quality of life for our community and for this portion of the region. So thank you guys so much for your time today. Really appreciate it. Back to you, Kelsey.
Thank you, guys. This was incredibly eye-opening, and I think we all learned a lot. I want to let everybody on the call know we are planning a ride share or train trip to the state park, Colonel Allensworth State Park, for the Juneteenth Festival, which is next Saturday, June 8th. And as Denise and I believe Dr. Michael mentioned, people come and go to the state park, and that's great, and we want to encourage that, but it is separate from the community. So if you do plan on going with us to the Juneteenth Festival, please, be aware, be advised that there is the community there. And Dr. Michael, I think you mentioned there's the self-guided tour. Is that in the community or is that the state park? I think you're muted, but I think you said state park.
Yes, the state park, right.
So you can do the self-guided tour. We'll have a tour set up as well, but also take some time and explore the community, walk around, as Coyote had mentioned. The recording of this webinar as well as the slide deck will be on our website. I will email it to the panelists as well to put on their website. That last slide that Coyote had mentioned with all of the contact information will be on that slide deck. And for any follow-up or anything like that, please feel free to reach out to any of us, and we'd be happy to continue the conversation and engage further. And I really want to thank Dr. Michael, Reverend Hudson, Coyote, Denise. This was I was blown away last year at the 2023 APA conference, and I was just honored to be able to continue this conversation and reach a little bit further to our members. So I thank you guys so much, and we look forward to a continued partnership. I think Dennis is
Okay.
pointing.
Yeah, Charles Allensworth is here. If he can close out, that would be great. He's a
Absolutely,
descendant
let's
from
do
Allensworth.
it.
I'm just trying to get access. Does everybody hear me?
Yes.
First and foremost, I want to thank all of the panelists. I think you did an excellent job in presenting all this information. I sure appreciate you. Dennis and Denise, I met your mother in Allensworth State Park many years ago. I appreciate you both continuing to honor her legacy by doing this work. She was a very powerful and personable person. I wish that I would have had more time with her, as I know you both do as well. I just had a basic question, just because my daughter and I, Ariana Allensworth, have been doing some research and wanted to do a project surrounding Allensworth for 2024, but unfortunately we didn't get the grant that we were trying to get. But my question to all of you, particularly to Dennis and Denise, is what can I do, or what can we do to continue to support you in your efforts? Because I think that you are doing really, really great work, and Allensworth needs to be sustained, not only for now, but also for future generations. As you know, my great great uncle wanted to establish a vocational institute at Allensworth, but unfortunately it was voted down by the California legislature. That's why I appreciate the work that you're doing, because some of the work, particularly with the project for the youth and learning more about the environment and appreciating the Mother Earth. And I think that's one of the ways that will draw our youth in more, is to educate them and also to inform them of how their ancestors basically lived off the land. And if they understand better agriculture and how to grow crops and how to sustain that, I think that would help a lot of our youth to be more involved and more interested in standing on the shoulders of their ancestors. That's all I have to say, and thank you all for this presentation. I'm glad I had a chance to be part of this. I usually work on Wednesdays, but God gave me the day off, so I'm glad to be here. Thank you.
Okay, well, yeah, thank you, Mr. Allensworth. And what I would share with you is that you've heard us talk about our co-op programming, so I know from your daughter that you have a background in that, so we'll be looking for your input and sharing your wisdom with us on that, in addition to working with Ariana on our cultural district planning. So you're part of our work. We just need to connect with you, but you're definitely a part of our work. There's no way we can go without having descendants from this community, since many of them have passed on to not participate in this work with us. So thank you very much.
Well, let me also add very quickly that we have a group called a History Working Group. And your daughter has participated in our Zoom. We have monthly meetings, first Tuesday of each month at 3 p.m. We have a History Working Group meeting. It's all so far by Zoom. And like I said, your daughter has participated, and it may not be a bad idea for you to participate as we go forward and help us with your thoughts on some of the things we're doing or not doing.
And I would just say real quickly, and I as a preacher, you notice I've been quiet. I haven't said a whole lot, but just a couple of things. CDFA was a major contributor to what we have been doing as well. And then I would say, as far as the young people leaving, here there has not been anything that was something that was to hold people here. There are things taking place now that interest the young people, and I don't see any reason why they would want to leave and not come back. One of the things that does help them to have meaning is what Charles Allensworth was just talking about. And it's my responsibility as a minister to help people understand that we're in relationship not only with one another, but with God's creation. See, and so we have a responsibility to help take care of this earth, this land. And farming is a way, doing farming in a sustainable, regenerative, organic way is a way how you can help heal the earth. And by helping to heal the earth, you help heal relationships between us as well. And so I think these are some of the things that people will be learning about Allensworth as we go forward doing this type of agriculture. People will see this as a model and desire to do the same thing in their communities.
Thank you.
Great, that was wonderful. And I think with that, we can close out. Thank you all again. We really appreciate it. I will send a follow-up email to everybody with the link and the slide deck. And thank you all for your time.
So long, so long.
Thank you.
Goodbye.
So long.
Bye.